Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options and Play video update. Um, so if you're like me and you're like any of the traders on our VTF, I feel like the last week or even like 2 weeks, we've been like struggling to find levels of support underneath on a lot of these like stocks or ETFs, right? So I have the Qs up here, so I'll talk about the Qs, but it's like as these stocks break down and the market keeps dropping, it's like people just keep looking out further and further back to see like, oh, what's the next level of support, right? When the stock loses the month low and then the year low and then last year's low, right? People just keep looking back further and further and further to try to find what the next key area of support is. And then along the same lines, people are looking out on they're going out back several weeks, they're going back several months, they're using monthly indicators. So like instead of using like the daily moving averages, which is what the Qs are, right now the Qs are below all daily moving averages. Now people are starting to use like the weeklies, right? So I was looking at the 200 week moving average, because the Qs were below all of the daily moving averages, right? And now you got some people starting to talk about monthly moving averages. And I have kind of mentioned this, and I think it applies all the time, not just in the current environment where things are really breaking down and people are using longer and longer term indicators. But to me, it's important to remember that if you're using a short term indicator, right, then you probably want to focus on a shorter term setup with possibly shorter term options, right? So I think this is what's like important to take away from it. It's like if you're focused on like a 5 to 10 minute intraday pattern, right, then it can make sense to use short term options, right? Because you're most likely your holding period for a 5 to 10 minute setup is only going to be a matter of minutes, maybe like a couple hours if it plays out in your favor, right? If you're trading off a daily chart, well, then you want to make sure you have enough time, right? Because if you're trading off a daily chart, then that means your time frame is days, right? Not hours necessarily. So if you're trading off a daily chart, you want to make sure you have enough time for that setup. So several weeks, right? It could be a couple weeks to several weeks. I mean, a daily indicator, you want to make sure you have time. Now, if you're going all the way out to like a weekly indicator, right, then you need even more time. So if you're trading off like a weekly chart, right? So again, like looking at like a weekly 200 day moving average, like on the Qs, that's like you're talking right now like probably months plus time frame. I mean, like to accurately go after a setup like this, you have to give it time. I mean, like you're trading off like a longer term indicator, right? And then some people are using monthly M&As. I mean, like in those, then you're talking about like 3, 4, 5 months time frame. So if you're looking at these patterns, and I'm not, I myself am looking at them some of them too, but I think it's just really important to remember that if you're trading options off patterns like this, you need to have the right time frames, right? Like I wouldn't be trading weekly contracts, so like contracts that expire in like 4 to 5 days, if I'm focused on a 200 week moving average, right? Like I like any type of setup, just to give confirmation, you're going to need 1 week. I mean, like that's the type of setup, right? Like 1 week is one bar, and then that just confirms whether or not there's actual support there, right? That let alone doesn't really have like the trade start to move in your favor or do what you want it to do. So I think as people start to look further back and start to use like longer and longer time frames for these indicators, it's just important to remember that like the options like have to reflect like the length of those indicators too, because otherwise then you might be right in the sense that the Qs have support and could bounce off the 200 week, but if your options expire in 4 or 5 days, there might not be anywhere near enough time for that trade to play out, right? So it's food for thought, because we were talking about it today, and I feel like a lot of people are probably in the same boat where if you're looking at support levels and going back further and further as these stocks fall, it's like, okay, You just need to be mindful that like the time frame of your indicator should reflect into like the time frame of your options position as well. Okay. If you like this video and you're looking for more information about swing trading with options, please follow up with the link in the description of the video for more information on options in play. Have a great night, stay well, and then we'll talk to you all tomorrow.